Okay, so we're still on step 4, diagramming long arguments, and now we're going to take on a really long one. This is example number 10. It's the longest one that I'll do in these 10 examples. So just get ready. It's more of the same. It's more of the same kind of decisions, it's more of the same kind of judgments. It's just going to end up being a much bigger diagram. I've gone ahead and copied in the whole argument. I just find it easier that way. You may find it easier to have a Microsoft Word document open right next to iLogos. I just like to have everything right there. And I've made the canvas 2 by 2, so 2 pages wide. Note that even though iLogos calls this 2 pages, text boxes can span across 2 pages. And I've also made it 2 pages deep, which means I can scroll down and I'll have this down here. And I think what I'm going to do, and this will make this video a little bit different from others, I'll be going back and forth a lot. And I'll try to see if the diagram will fit down on these 2 pages. It may not, in which case I'll add more pages. That'll totally be fine. But I think I'm going to use this space over here to just sort of start constructing maybe some sub-arguments, getting some premises down. Of course, the first step that I want to do is step 2, which is finding the conclusion. Now, when you're dealing with long arguments, you want to not give short shrift to step 2. If you get the conclusion wrong, there's going to be nothing about your diagram that's correct. That's a tiny bit of an exaggeration, but it's mostly true. So you want to double check and make sure that you really think this is the point that the author wants to make. Now, of course, if you determine what the conclusion is, then you're building the diagram, and then you suddenly realize as you're building the diagram that you had the conclusion wrong. Don't worry, you can always go back and change it. iLogos makes that really easy. But I'm going to look at this and I'm going to see, do I think that this is right? Yep, I think this is what this is about. This is an argument trying to convince me that booing at sporting events is sometimes acceptable. All right, let's just work our way through it. I'm going to double click on the reason box button. I'm going to make a whole bunch of boxes here because I know that there's going to be lots and lots and lots of premises. Try not to be intimidated. The work is the same whether you have 3 premises or 300 premises. There's nothing really different. You do have to keep more things in your head when you do a larger diagram. You have to keep in mind that you have this sub-argument going over here and things like that. But it's really just a quantity issue. It's not qualitatively different. So if you can do step 3 with a little bit of practice, you should be able to do step 4. I'm sure I'll need more text boxes than that, but that's enough cluttering up my screen for right now. Let's just go in there and try to find some premises. Okay, the first couple of paragraphs is just, I think, a restatement of the conclusion and a little bit of background. So the second paragraph is a good example of some language that's in the example that doesn't really have anything to do with the argument. It's just saying what the inspiration was for this particular series of articles. But it's not actually presenting any evidence for the conclusion. So let's move on. It's helpful when arguments are numbered, but don't be too swayed by that. Sometimes arguers or writers present things in lists, but it turns out the argument itself is not quite as neat as the author is presenting it. Nevertheless, it's helpful in some cases. So I'm going to go searching for premises. And the first one says that booing poor conduct is to be encouraged. I'm hesitating a little bit because I notice that the author says it is encouraged, but I'm wondering if what the author really means is that it ought to be encouraged. And let me read that whole paragraph and see. That whole paragraph itself is an argument. And it's an argument that has the conclusion that booing poor conduct should be encouraged. It's not really claiming that it is encouraged. In fact, it's giving reasons that it ought to be encouraged. Okay? Now, right off the bat, I have found an argument. So I can pretend that the paragraph that's numbered number 1 is a step 3 argument. Let's just take the time to go ahead and diagram it. I know it's a sub-argument. I know that it's not going to be the entirety of the argument, but if I think about it as a step 3, it might make it a little bit easier. Okay, so what premises does this author give to show me that booing poor conduct should be encouraged? Today's star athletes have been able to get away with anything since they were children. That's one claim that the author is making. And I find when I'm dealing with long arguments, it's really helpful to just stop right there and say, does the author give me any evidence for 3? I know that 3 is going to give evidence for 2. Does the author give me any evidence for 3? Let me read and find out. Yeah, the author claims that coaches have looked the other way in pursuit of victories. That's a reason to believe that, choosing an arrow here, that today's star athletes have been able to get anywhere. And then we're surprised when millionaire professional athletes turn into maladjusted narcissists. That too, I think, is a claim that professional athletes turn into maladjusted narcissists. That's reason to believe that they've been able to get away with anything since they were children. Okay. If people would boo the spoiled rotten star running back in 7th grade, he might not end up in jail at 25. Most sports fans are happy to boo the bad hit when the other guy makes it. How about booing the local hero when he or she deserves it? So, something like, I'm trying to figure out the right phrasing here. Something like booing athletes when they're young will keep them from becoming maladjusted. I've combined several sentences there. I think that's fine. Or I really rephrase this if-then statement. And I'm not sure yet. I'm going to have to think about how 3 and 6 are or are not related. I'm going to think about that. And then I'm trying to figure out what to do with this sentence. Most sports fans are happy to boo the bad hit when the other guy makes it. How about booing the local hero when he or she deserves it? Let me throw those down. I'm still thinking. I don't know exactly how they'll fit in, but people are willing to boo their opponent because of bad behavior. And that, I think 7 is being used as evidence for people should be willing to boo their own team or player because of bad behavior. So, get my canvas, just put that sort of out of the way for now. 7 is definitely evidence for 8. I'm just going to put that there. Do a little neatening up here. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I think 3 and 6 are dependent. Okay, I think that they're linked, and let's just try it out. I'd like to draw it first. It's easier for me to double check myself if I draw it first. Today's star athletes have been able to get away with anything since they were children. Booing athletes when they're young will keep them from becoming maladjusted. Therefore, booing poor conduct should be encouraged. If I say, well, look, booing is not going to help them not become maladjusted, booing isn't going to make them good people, then it doesn't really matter that they've been able to get away with anything. I want to rephrase this. This is a little too imprecise. Today's star athletes have not been booed. I think that's really, when he says get away with anything, I think that means that when they've behaved poorly, they haven't been booed. So today's star athletes haven't been booed, but booing them while they're young will keep them from maladjusted, therefore it should be encouraged. And this is evidence that they haven't been booed since children. I wonder if 5 also gives evidence to 6. It's possible they turn into maladjusted, therefore booing athletes when young will keep them from being maladjusted. Maybe. I might think more about that. This has nothing to do with this argument over here, which is about athletes while they're young. So I think, and you know what, I'm going to make this even wider. I'm going to, up with my canvas, make it 3 pages wide just so I can stretch all the way over here. I think the fact that people should be willing to boo their own team because of bad behavior is just evidence that booing poor conduct should be encouraged. If you want to move things around so that the arrows don't cross, that's fine. Okay. I think that's good. Yep, okay, so that's the first sub-argument.